It says that you're live on YouTube right now.
Yeah, we're going to a different stream.
Oh, snap. Yeah. Oh, wow. I see myself. That's weird.
I love the frozen versions of people. Well, we at least got here 10 minutes before it started. So, Gina, thank you for saying those kind words. I was very stressed out for a second, so I didn't get to tune in to your awesomeness.
And I'm still looking forward to hearing her mastery of this accent because I'm very jealous of it. It was beautiful.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you. I grew up with Hungarians and Eastern Europeans. So I'm just lucky because I heard it a lot. This Polish is a little different, but it's still in that same kind of vein.
Yeah, the Hungarian is a little more guttural, whereas the Polish is more in the nose.
That's what I was noticing.
My friend Raph would have really appreciated it. You sounded like his mother.
Oh, cool.
That's how his mother sounds.
Cool.
So I guess the only other character that is sort of floating out there is the character of Nina. Can one of the elders take on Nina?
I can do it.
Okay, thank you.
You said Mina?
Nina with an N.
Nina, okay.
That's Nick's wife when he is Anthony. It's Vala's mama.
Yeah, I want to be my wife.
My mommy.
Am I my own grandfather then?
Yeah.
All right, I have done all of the links again. Okay, Lee, I know you're in here as an audience member. In the chat, or I can repost the chat if you haven't received it. The playbill is in there and a bunch of links we have to support the actors and support other Romani work. Wow, that was not how I wanted this day to start, but it is what it is. Ooh, Hurricane Delta makes landfall, Southwest Louisiana.
Oh no.
I know. All right, everyone, I'm going to go ahead and put our pre-show in. Break lots of legs. Have a good time. Where the heck did it go?
Amari si Amari.
Every time it gets me.
Amari si Amari.
Welcome to SUNY Sullivan Zoom Theater Lobby. Kindly let us introduce you to some of our virtual features. Let your audience members know that you are here by tapping in the chat in the Zoom room or in the YouTube chat, that you're here and your location and how many people are in your party. You should be hearing the inspiring sounds of Romani music. Cass, are we doing okay? Can we hear the music? And seeing our lobby slideshow, which has images from our original production and from the Romani Pokoroma from the time period. If you are locked in silence or darkness, please check your video or volume, or use the handy raised hand icon in the Zoom room, or type in the chat in YouTube that it is not working, and I will try to assist you. Enjoy the rest of the pre-show for the next 5 minutes.
Amari si amari. Amari si amari, amari cinibori, ay la 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 la. Amari si amari, amari cinibori, ay la 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 la. Dui dui desce dui ciumidau me la comui ai la 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 la. Hey dui dui desce dui ciumidau me la comui ai la 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 la. La comui si rupulo pușche trubuladino ai la 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 la. Hey la comui si rupulo pușche trubuladino ai la 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 la. Che savrà le dom te che le lo puro Roma la 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 la. Puro rom te che le la vista e c'è la 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 la. All right.
about a minute until we start. Thank you for those of you who have joined us, our audience members and our cast. We have 2 people in here who are audience members. And there is a chat that has several things, including the playbill in it. However, if you just arrived, it probably won't show up. So I will repost all of that. So hopefully you see that all there now. We'll be starting here in about 30 seconds. She says with German precision. All right. Hello. I'm going to go ahead and pin myself to make myself larger. That's fun. No, it's not, but it is what it is. Welcome, friends, kumpania, to SUNY Sullivan's Zoom Theater for this very special live reading of And the Violins Stop Playing, book by Alexander Ramati and adapted for live performance by myself, Jessica Lopez-Barkle, who I am the Associate Professor of Theater and Speech and the Theater Program Director at our particular college. We also are performing this with the lovely performance rights from the daughter of Alexander Ramati, Maya Ramati. So she watches this afterwards. Hello, Maya. Thank you so much for letting us make this wonderful story have another life. This is our first production using the literal or figurative world war, which is the theme for our 2020-2021 theater season. We are examining plays where war occurs in the micro or macrocosm. This particular production that you are going to watch tonight is a hybrid of an audiobook and live performance, as the book that inspired this performance has been adapted into Book It Repertory Theater's trademark style, which is a wonderful theater company in Seattle, Washington. This is an experiment, as all Zoom theater is in our challenging times, combining the forms of live theater, live performance, and live Zoom performances streamed out into the ether of YouTube for all to experience. For best results, you should be watching this on a computer. For optimal viewing, please watch on a computer with a full screen. We recommend turning off any notifications and closing any applications on your computer, as they can slow your computer and therefore slow down our performance. We have just about 21 performers from every walk of my theater journey, from 7 different countries and time zones, 6 different states, and about 18 different tribal lands. We are currently streaming from the Esopus tribal land, which is a part of the Delaware Nation and the Lenape tribe. These Zoom tiles, if I go back to a gallery view, and if they all pop into screen, we can play a little fun game of how do you know me? These Zoom tiles are the fabric of my life. They are a quilt that contains that fabric. They have been fellow theater ensemble members. You can raise your hand when that happens. They have been current or former students, classmates from my undergraduate school, my graduate school, original cast members that were in this show when we had it as a staged reading back in 2004. Yeah, 2004. Long time ago. And all of them that I'm looking at just fill my heart and make it so heavy, because it's amazing to have them all here, because they are all dear, dear friends that I don't get to see all the time. And anybody who's a theater artist know that sometimes we have these intense relationships with one another, and then it's ephemeral because then we move on to the next thing. But that doesn't mean that the heart isn't always there with all of you. And it's so amazing to have you here with me. And I am also blessed that I am able to have this convening with you to tell the story of a forgotten piece of history that people don't often learn about. From Dr. Ian Hancock's book, We Are the Romani People, Ame Sam e Romane Gene, This quote, "The greatest tragedy to befall the European Romani population was the attempt to eradicate it as part of the Nazis' plan to have a gypsy-free Europe. Although it wasn't the first governmental plan to exterminate Romanis, General Emperor Karl VI had previously issued such an order in 1721. It was by far the most devastating, ultimately destroying over half of the Romani population in Nazi-occupied Europe. Romanis were the only other population besides the Jews who were targeted for extermination on racial/ethnic grounds in the final solution. We should include Africans in this group, but oftentimes they had been killed before the final solution was written. They would do them on roadside killings, etc. They were eradicated before they actually had the concentration camps. Note that in Germany, the traditional Romani population calls itself Sinti, while the word Zigeuner is the German equivalent of gypsy and should be avoided. In Romani, the Holocaust is referred to as the Baro Pelagmos, or great devouring of human life. Pelagmos is an ugly word, well chosen for the ugliest event in our history. It can also mean rape, as well as gaping, as in shock or horror. Some people hesitate to say the word out loud, end quote. I, along with my fellow classmates, we can raise our hands again, from Cornish College of the Arts, were taught by the inimitable John Wilson to always ask the question, why this play at this time? My answer is another quote from Dr. Ian Hancock's book, quote, "Calling a population vermin or a disease rather than recognizing it as being part of the human family is a technique used to dehumanize it and distance it from society. Such terms were constantly used to refer to Jews and Romanis in the Third Reich in an effort to desensitize the general population to the increasingly harsh treatment being meted out against them. After all, vermin and diseases need to be eradicated. Disturbingly, this language is still with us." End quote. This desensitizing language is heard by current opponents of Romani citizenry all over the world, the Black Lives Matter movement, and immigrants attempting to enter the borders of the United States. Behind most of our participants, based on what technology each of them have, welcome to the remote world of theater, is the flag of the Romani people, a people with no homeland, who have never started a war, and who have never taken over a foreign government. The blue and green represent the heavens and the earth. The red wheel is a 16-spoke chakra / cart wheel or caravan wheel that represents the itinerant nature of the Romani people, their Indian origin, and the importance of the fire as the burst of energy that began the universe. The running time for part 1 of And the Violins Stop Playing is about 1 hour and 40 minutes. And afterwards, please join us for a meet and greet with our wonderful performers. Please donate anything you are able to the links in the chat. They are in the YouTube chat and in the chat in the Zoom room. The givebutter.com link will help support our performers, and it will be divided amongst all of them to pay them for their time, because actors and artists should be paid. And at this time, it is very difficult. As most of you probably saw in the New York Times, they are pushing Broadway even to May 2021. So it is very hard for many of us to work who work gig to gig. So please support all that you can. I believe in paying artists, and that is something that we can do right now. And please, if you can, I know this is a tough time and we'll take whatever you have. You may also donate to the Voice of Roma link, which can help promote and support Romani arts and culture. If you want to know our participants and the tribal lands they belong to or that they are streaming from, please look at the playbill in the chat. There is also a link in the chat to experience more live performances made and performed by Romani theater artists. As the theater world begins to grasp the concept of who has the right to tell stories and what stories should be told, it is important to note that forgotten histories are important, but the current struggle is also important. Romani culture is alive and well and does not need to have only its stories of trauma told. We will be telling one of those stories tonight and tomorrow, but that story of trauma is also resistance. There are many other stories to be heard and told. Please check out this work and support the On the Edge work by Minge Panther in Givlilpen Theater, which I probably just completely damaged, and I'm sorry for any of you who've watched this. In addition to many other artists being featured at the Roma Theater Retrospective 2020, which is happening right now. Now we are ready to go. But before we begin our show, please give a round of applause by hitting those clever, lovely icons in the Zoom chat. There's also the party or the thumbs up, heart, etc. But if you are watching from YouTube, you can just type in the word applause. Some of you may have the capability on YouTube to put in emojis. Please do so. As we theater artists love to hear your laughter. We love to hear your clapping and we miss it. So your emojis are about what we're gonna get. Thank you so much for being here, and we shall begin the show. I will serve as your lovely stage directions person. Preamble, a Romani tale. We hear the sound of a solo violin playing a slow version of the Romani song, Amaritsi Amari. We begin to hear the stamping of feet and the clapping of hands. The lights fade up on a Romani camp with men wrestling, girls dancing, musicians playing, men working, women washing clothes, etc. The lights then fade down to reveal Rosa downstage with Roman, her grandson. She is reading his fortune. The sound fades as Rosa begins to speak. Rosa is the Puchuridaj, the clever old mother in the Romani camp. A projection of the card is seen while she speaks the meaning to her grandson. The 8 of clubs is Roman's first card. And I'm not going to read the rest of those stage directions, Gina. I didn't tell you. That's a new cut. Sorry. This is live theater, everyone.
The 8 of clubs refers to the branches of our family structure. The shape looks like several trees and reflects the tribes we belong in, and to the trees they have individual branches, which are the individuals in our family structure. As branches grow in different directions, so people within a family have different interests and ideas. Sometimes the differences cause disagreements. But just like in the Ace of Spades card, the strong branches that connect us also bind us. And these bonds are strong roots that will last of time.
Lights fade on Rosa and Roman. A faster version of Amaritsi Amari strikes up. As the lights fade up on Roman as a teenage boy with blonde hair and his parents, Vala and Demeter, both with the stereotypical look of a Romani couple, dark hair and eye color, colorful clothing, tanned skin. Roman looks more like a Pole than the rest of his family. They are working at Fukier's wine cellar in Warsaw, Poland. There are German soldiers, other patrons, and bar workers in the bar listening to Roman's parents. Roman sits and watches absent-mindedly as he reads a book. The music fades as the lights crossfade to just Roman. Projection, Fukier's Wine Cellar, Warsaw, Poland.
It was the evening of November 27th, 1942. I remember the day only too well because on that day my entire life changed, shattered by events which were not of our own making.
A bald, well-fed man came over, snapping his fingers.
At my parents.
Demeter, keep on playing. The customers are calling for more music.
One of Harmony makes his violin cry, adjusting her green waistcoat over her slender but full figure.
My father nodded.
He tossed back his black hair, then tucked his violin under his chin.
We began moving
around, stopping at each table, making each customer feel that we were playing the lilting romantic tune exclusively for him.
As we came to a group of
Black uniform SS officers with twin silver flashes on their collars.
One of them, a good-looking lieutenant, good-looking and broad-shouldered lieutenant, suddenly hit his fist against the table, overturning his half-filled glass.
The waitress rushed to wipe the drink.
I drew a deep breath when I saw the
very young waitress with long flaxen braids now began serving.
A perspiring Pole as he kissed his lady friend's fingertips.
She smiled at me.
When she noticed the young strapping boy staring at her ample behind, she liked the look of this boy, a good Aryan.
The Goiner,
the German shouted, wagging his finger.
Stop playing your phony tunes.
I looked up
and saw him halt his bow as his long, narrow eyes under their bushy brows blinked nervously.
We all
understood German. Romany's pickup languages quickly.
The officer got up, propping himself against the table. You can fool all these people, but not me, Zagoiner. I know what real gypsy music is. Play that or don't play at all.
The nightclub manager appeared, his forehead covered with beads of sweat. "I'm sorry, sir," he said, before snapping his finger at my father. "Play," he ordered in broken German. "What the officer is asking for."
I looked at the lieutenant.
He was dark-haired with a swarthy complexion and an odd triangular cleft between his white upper teeth.
I smiled inwardly, for the man did not look at all like a member of the Aryan race, but more like a Romany.
With a sigh, I tucked my violin back under my chin and struck the opening chords of Brahms' Hungarian dance.
I began to dance around the room, banging my tambourine, my eyes anxiously fixed on the German officer.
That's it. That's real gypsy music. You see, Brahms, they composed the real gypsy music. Hundreds of others merely tried to imitate them. What they have been playing up till now is phony. It's not even composed by gypsies. It doesn't matter that Brahms and Liszt were not gypsies either, but they did thorough research. You know what research is, Liebchen?
The waitress shakes her head.
I'm a doctor, you see, a physician, but also a scientist. I love medical research. Music is like medicine. To practice it correctly also requires research. Besides, I am a connoisseur of music. They can't fool me.
The song ends.
Bravo! Bravo!
All the others in the room and even the adjacent rooms took the hint and added their applause to his.
At this, Demeter strikes up an encore of Brahms' Hungarian Dance No. 7. At a faster pace, the bar patrons begin to dance. Roman joins the promptings of the lieutenant. At its height, Roman is put up on a table while the crowd cheers on his dancing with sounds of, "Look at our Aryan youth," etc. Roman smiles. The song ends. Demeter does not look happy as the lieutenant walks over and puts his arms around Roman.
Here, son, have some schnapps.
He filled a glass with vodka and handed it to me. My father's
forehead furrowed.
As he watched me unable to refuse my first ever alcoholic drink. I barely touched the glass and put it down.
But the German lieutenant would have none of that. You are a man, aren't you?
Much as I hated the taste and the idea of a German mistaking me for
a good Aryan boy,
in front of my disapproving parents, I had to finish my drink.
The lieutenant smacks Roman behind the back happily.
Now, list.
A fast version of Liszt's Consolation number 3 begins. Roman gets up to play. The lieutenant is visibly surprised and stands up.
When we finished, the lieutenant led the entire audience in loud applause.
The club manager rushed in. Gut?
Sehr gut,
the lieutenant answered. He dug into his pocket and slipped a few banknotes into my father's hand.
Thank you, sir.
My father was about to move away when the officer beckoned to him.
Wait. Here.
He pulled out a visiting card and handed it to my father.
This is a civilian card. I am on leave from the front near Moscow. Soon we'll reach there and this war will be over. Come to my town, will you? Günzburg in Bavaria. I can obtain a long and lucrative engagement for you there. Our family practically owns Günzburg.
I glanced at the card in my father's hand.
I am a romantic at heart and I love gypsies. We have them in Günzburg too, but none of them plays as well as you. Is this your son?
He said as he indicated me.
Yes.
Strange. I would have thought he were one of Hitler's own. I'd be interested in talking to you about your lineage when you come to Günzburg.
I smiled inwardly at the strange comment, being mistaken for someone who could date the likes of my beloved waitress.
Go on. Play some more, Zigeuner.
My father motioned for us to take a rest.
He would play a solo.
I watched him as he smoothed his mustache, happy with the large tip he had received. Then he raised his violin and began to play.
Lights fade as Demeter begins to play Liszt's Consolation number 3 slowly. Scene 2, what happened that night? Lights to a low fade on the trio entering their house.
We left the nightclub as usual at 2 a.m.
Leaving a few drunk customers behind. Using Chiga.
Snow was still falling, covering the cobblestone square and the roofs of 3-story medieval houses surrounding it.
We mounted the dark staircase to the third floor and stopped in front of the door with the nameplate. Dmitry Merga, musician.
We entered the room as quietly as we could.
Lights fade up to reveal Mara, a young girl with Romany features.
We were surprised by the wan yellow light of a smoky acetylene lamp hanging on the wall, not visible outside because of the curtained window, on the edge of her bed in the living room.
That Mara, in her long night dress, pretty, with dark, beribboned braids and a dark complexion.
She did not look like me.
But like all little Romani girls.
Why are you up?
Mara points to Donko as he is revealed. He is a burly, disheveled man, about 40, with streaks of blood caked to his face, or a really pretty African-American woman.
My God, Donko Molar!
It was my father's cousin, and he fell straight into his arms.
I escaped from the ghetto.
He gasped, speaking in the Romany dialect of the lowland Romanys.
We broke out of the Gizia Street prison.
He embraced me, then my
mother.
Ghetto? What were you doing in the ghetto?
Sit down, Donko. Let me clean your face. Mara, bring a basin of water and a towel.
Mara exits and re-enters with a basin and towel. Vala begins to bathe Danko's face.
We fought the prison guards and killed 2 of them.
Danko raised his arms.
With these, we broke out of the prison, climbed the wall, the ghetto wall, then split, all 10 of us. Well, I made it to you by dashing from courtyard to courtyard or hiding in the dark shadows of the walls. The curfew helped.
He flinched as my mother
Pulls his hair aside to attend to the wounds on his scalp.
Why did they send you to prison? What did you do? Did they take you for a Jew?
You mean you don't know what's happening to us?
Not as of late.
Ugh, I forgot. You're raising your children as city people now, aren't you?
We work late, sleep night, the children go to school, and there aren't any Romani bands in Warsaw except ours.
You have turned away from us. You are a Fortka Romani, a town Romani.
So have you been these past 3 years?
But I haven't lost contact with my people.
Look, we were in Brest-Litovsk a year ago, in our tribe's winter camp. We saw my parents, your parents. They all felt safe. The Jews were in the Brest-Litovsk ghetto, but nobody was molesting the Romanis.
Listen to me. 3 months ago, Himmler issued an order to deal with us. There are plenty of Romanis in the Warsaw ghetto, whole families. They're all wearing the Z sign for Zigeuner instead of J for Judah.
He flinched again as my mother
Cleaned his face, peeling off the bloody, dirty scab. Oh, get me the iodine,
she said to Mara.
Mara runs off stage and brings back iodine.
Your turn will come too, even though you may feel safe for a time.
He gasped as my mother.
Put iodine on his injuries.
I felt a cold running through my veins. I looked at my father for a reassuring word that we were safe, that nothing would happen to us. My father's...
Adam's apple twitched, and drops of sweat came out of his forehead. Why did they put you in prison?
I fought, resisted the arrest, that's why.
My father's...
Troubled eyes.
Traveled to...
My mother, then to me and my...
Sister, little Mara began to cry softly.
Nothing will happen to us, Mara. Right, Demeter?
Her voice broke a little as she, too,
looked at her husband for comfort.
Father
tightened his mouth. The dimple in his chin became more pronounced, but he kept silent.
Demeter, for God's sake, wake up. You must run. Listen to me. Take your family and hide. Just run into some forest.
Lights fade to just Roman as he moves downstage to address the audience.
I shook my head, bewildered, trying to understand what was happening. Jews. Yes, I knew all about the Jews in their ghetto. But why Romanis? And why us? We had lived in Warsaw for 10 years. My father was a marvelous violinist. Very few Romanis could play Brahms or Liszt. The Germans needed us. Their Polish nightclub manager had good connections. He even knew Gunther Saar, the Gestapo chief of Warsaw, who came to Fouquiers at least once a week.
Lights fade to just Donko.
Listen, in the Watz ghetto, I saw hundreds of our people die of typhus. Then the Germans started to transport the healthy ones. They said for resettlement in the east. The east turned out to be Chelmo, a concentration camp in the north.
Lights fade back to the family and Donko speaking.
They don't treat us differently than any longer, Demeter. They say, not for racial reasons, as we originally were told from India, we are Aryans, but they say for social reasons, we are nomads, thieves, criminals, and parasites.
He closed his eyes for a moment, exhausted by all that had happened to him.
I need to sleep. Please, cousin, tomorrow. I must go to Annan. We all, those who escaped, agreed to meet in the Annan forest. We swore among ourselves that if we managed to escape, we would all meet and form a Romani partisan group to fight the Nazis.
I have a family. I also have parents. I must think of them. And Vala's parents and the others, my relatives, my compañía. Vala, let him sleep in Mara's bed, and Mara can sleep with us. During the night, I will think about what to do, and in the morning, I'll let you know what I decide.
He looked at me, saw my concern, and gave me a smile.
Don't worry, son. Your father will think of something.
Your father will think of something, as always. Come to bed now.
Lights fade on the family, but lastly on Roman. Scene 3. Big town Romanis. Lights fade up on Rosa. Projection, the 5 of spades upside down.
This picture refers to forces outside of your control. In its upright position, this card indicates temperance and moderation in all things. In the reverse, it indicates that your life is spiraling out of control. Like the spade that in the Gaji used to control the earth, it's uncontrollable energy, a force that is not your family is working on sabotaging your life.
Lights crossfade to just Roman.
I lay in bed in my room, unable to sleep. I found myself very calm, certain that my father would find some way of remaining in Warsaw. I heard my parents' voices from their bedroom, quiet and calm, but I could not make out the words. I awakened in the daylight and heard my father pulling aside the curtains of the window.
It's 7 o'clock. Come, we must fetch our instruments. There's a charwoman at the club now. We can go and get them.
What for? I asked, yawning, closing my eyes and turning back to the wall. Do you want to practice a new number? Will I get to school on time?
You're not going to school. We are leaving. We are going away, but not to the forest. We are going to our camp in Brest-Litovsk to get your grandparents and all the others and then travel south to Hungary before it's too late.
I abruptly sat up, in bed.
Lights shift to just Roman.
Again, the young waitress attracted my attention. I imagined her
smiling at me, striding easily and gracefully, balancing her tray with a bottle of glasses high over her head.
I felt the stubble on my face and stuck my chin out jauntingly. It was a high time I started shaving like other Poles, I decided, and I would grow a small mustache that was in fashion. I saw myself asking the waitress out on a date, to take her to the Luna Park or the skating rink or even to the cinema.
To hold her hand like a real Pole.
Light shift back to the Mirga apartment.
There are no Germans in Hungary and plenty of opportunities for us. Come on, get up, son. We mustn't waste time.
Tonight, when we don't turn up for work, they will know we've left.
Light shift to just Roman.
I looked at my father. His swarthy Romani looks so unlike mine. But yet I loved that face and respected that face. I then thought of my schooling. How much I loved to read and write. How much I loved being a Pole and not a Romani. How I loved to run the courtyard with other schoolboys, pretending I was just like them. Could I stay here without my family? I could easily relocate to another city and be passed off as a Pole. Could I not?
Lights shift back to the apartment.
Father, they'll report us if we don't show up for work.
By that time, we will already be in our camp.
Strange, I reflected. For my father to use that expression, our camp. In the past, he had always referred to the place as our grandparents' camp. I never liked going there, even for a brief Christmas holiday. I had nothing in common with my people or the custom of wandering all over the country. Their strange habit of not bathing and eating food that clearly hasn't been sterilized. Only in winter did they settle in their wagons on the banks of the Bug River, at the same place, year after year.
Lights crossfade to Fukir's wine cellar with Roman and Demeter picking up the instruments. The waitress enters.
When my father and I went to Fukier's wine cellar to get our instruments,
The blonde waitress entered.
Unexpectedly.
What are you two doing here? We aren't open until 6 o'clock.
I spoke for my father and I. We are going to put together some new love songs in our repertoire, but we need our instruments to do so.
What kind of love song?
Polish ones?
The waitress smiles and leaves.
I watched her.
As she went back into the kitchen to attend to something.
And I mourned, never asking her to dance or maybe go for a walk in the nearby forest of Annan, or in the parks, or by the beautiful palaces and churches.
Lights crossfade to a train station.
Later at the train station, my father led us to a carriage.
Scanning the compartments from the corridor until he found a half-empty one.
He motioned to us, and finally we were all seated in our places. I looked out of the window, trying to breathe in as much of my homeland as possible. I looked at my sister, just as traumatized as I was, and I put my arm around her.
As she was held, her ragged doll.
Tears had finally come. My eyes glistened as I said farewell to my hometown, my friends at school, my unfinished education, my carefree youth, the beautiful blonde waitress, and our so hard-won and so easily lost way of life that I might never know again.
Lights fade, faint sound of a train moving on the tracks, and an underscoring of Rieger's unaccompanied violin. Scene 4, Brest-Litovsk. Lights up on Rosa. Firelight, Romany music. Projection, the Three of Hearts.
The Three of Hearts looks like a Romany driving a horse-drawn wagon. The horse is a very powerful animal. It stands for our emotions. In the same way that the horse is powerful, so are our emotions. They drive us to success or despair, depending on how we learn to use them. This card warns you of a powerful emotional experience. So hold on to the reins firmly, otherwise you lose your heart.
Crossfade to Just the Family. Projection, Brest-Litovsk.
The sun was setting as we exited the train at its last stop at the Brest-Litovsk station. We would now have to get a carriage to my mother's and father's camp. We waited for our turn and then got into a carriage, with our valises and instruments piled up in front.
Roman sits at the back looking behind him the whole time. The family travels to the Romany camp.
Where to? The coachman asked. He had a huge walrus mustache and red, glistening eyes.
And I was sure he had been killing time waiting for customers.
With occasional sips of alcohol from a bottle he kept under his seat.
The Romany camp.
The driver turned and took a long look at his customers.
We were dressed no different from others.
But the man scrutinized our faces, dark and swarthy.
Except for mine.
You're gypsies? He asked matter-of-factly, without any hostility.
Yes. Is the winter camp still there, on the bank of the bug?
Yeah, of course. He smacked his lips and tugged at the reins. His horse moved on.
How are the Germans behaving here? Are they making trouble? I mean, for us gypsies.
No. Jews, yes. Gypsies, no. There are no more Jews in Brest-Litovsk.
I saw my father
breathe a sigh of relief. But then he turned pale. What do you mean? They used to live in the ghetto.
There's no more ghetto. A month ago, in a single day's operation, they evacuated it. They said evacuation. We all know what that means.
My father rubbed his face. Out of some 70,000 inhabitants of Brest-Litovsk, 40,000 had been Jews.
What does it mean?
Camps, concentration camps, possibly death. Poor people. But you gypsies, you have nothing to worry about. You're not Jews.
Some people, I reflected, are, at least in German eyes, worse than the Romanis. Some consolation.
Sounds of Romany music strike up.
By now it was dark, and the first stars and bright moon illuminated the sky. I saw my father craning his neck with great eagerness.
Lights on Just Roman.
I thought of the snow that would fall so beautifully outside the wine cellar on the cobbled main square of Old Town Warsaw, and how inside everything was like a holiday, all warm and full of celebration.
Lights fade back to the coach.
And then he suddenly saw it.
We all saw it.
In a large clearing in the woods, right over the riverbank, there were dozens of open fires.
Lighting up the big wooden wagons and a few tents.
Between the trees stood the canvas-covered carts used for traveling.
The familiar faces, the familiar sounds and voices, turning of instruments and the braying of horses.
Made my father break into a big smile.
We are home. Jamaro Ker.
He said in Romani.
Our home. Home is where you are brought up and where your parents live.
I bit my lips, but said nothing of what I was thinking. Of the cur on the third floor of Penienska Street in the Praga suburb of Warsaw, where I had been brought up and where my parents used to live.
Sounds of children. They enter.
At the sight of the approaching carriage, several Romani children reached us.
The driver stopped at the end of the path, some distance away from the first wagon.
Fear of Romani magic dies hard. Father
paid the fare.
The droshky drove off.
The coachman exits. Enter Sandu, Demeter's father, an elder.
I saw my grandfather, Sandu.
Stepping down from his wagon, a bent figure with a huge mane of white hair falling over his shoulders. My father
ran to embrace him.
Rosa, Demeter is here, and Vala and the children.
Enter Rosa. Enter Rosa.
Roman.
Sorry, I thought that was really. My grandmother stepped down from the wagon with outstretched arms.
They have grown up, the children. You look like a man, Roman.
You came for the celebrations, didn't you?
What celebrations?
The birthday. The 50th birthday of our leader, the Cheryl Rum. Isn't that why you have come?
Father shook his head.
Bewildered but said nothing.
Lights crossfade to firelight. Children, the Mirga family, and other Romani enter. Sound of a blast.
At 8 in the evening, a firework was shot high into the sky, breaking out into a beautiful star. This was the signal for the festivities to begin.
Women in long, bright, multicolored robes with
sequin necklaces.
And the
And
men
the men in checkered cotton
the
shirts,
collars
their
over the
collars
lapels
and
of their
lapels of their
lapels of
dark
their dark
jackets,
jackets,
wearing
many
them
of them wearing top boots.
We look towards a
Large wagon,
red and blue,
red and blue,
wooden dragons,
wooden dragons, and
griffins
griffins
over
over its entrance.
Antony and Nina Puma enter. These are Vala's parents.
Earlier, we had gone to greet my
Grandparents
on my
mother's side, and now they took their seats.
The stocky little man and his
Equally small, plump wife, her body marked by numerous childbearings, river laundering and cooking for her large family.
Mikita Kaval and Koro enter, and the entire Romani camp begins to applaud.
As Mikita Koval, the Shero Rom, finally made his appearance, emerging from his wagon.
With his son, Koru, walking respectfully one step behind him.
Mikita was a widower.
And Koro, his only son.
Mikita was a huge man, broad and heavy set, with shoulder-length hair, a trim mustache, and deeply set black eyes.
Koru, who strongly resembled his father, was a youth.
Of my age.
Curly-haired and husky with a strong muscled body of a young animal.
He sat on a chair next to his father, acting very much like the crown prince.
With a dignified nod of his head.
Koro acknowledged my presence. I knew he
did not like me look down on him, always treating me as though I was a traitor to my tribe.
Another blast. Sound of a Volkswagen.
Another firework was shot into the air, just as a Volkswagen car appeared on the path to the encampment.
The Shero Rom rose from his chair and rushed forward.
3 German officers enter.
3 German officers
alighted, and when they saluted,
Mikita raised his hand to his hat, returning the salute. Thank you, Colonel Cougar, for coming.
He said in German.
This is my son, Karo.
Kruger glanced at the young gypsy approvingly.
Mikita rubbed his hands with satisfaction, for the arrival of the German officers enhanced his status. Let us begin.
Sound of Romani music. Violinist, mandolinist, and flautist enter. Rudolph Puma and Koro begin to wrestle. Rudolph wins.
Suddenly music was heard. All heads turned as from the darkness of the woods, a band emerged playing Stolat, strolling towards the campfire.
Everyone begins to sing the Polish birthday song and claps with the music.
The Shero Rom rose from his chair and waved both his hat and his whip to express his thanks.
The old gypsy begins to play.
Mikita smiled benevolently.
Because for a Romani to be told he was old was no offense. It also meant to be wise and respected. You, like Django, Colonel Cougar?
Colonel nodded slightly, his face reserved and impassive.
I hope you like our food. We'll eat in a while, but before the meal there will be a little ceremony.
The Keldarari chief.
Stepped up, first carrying a package. He bowed to
Colonel Kruger.
Their chieftain.
A tall, bony-faced man wearing an overcoat. Guten Abend, he said to the colonel.
Who obviously knew him. Guten Abend, Dombrowski.
Then the man approached the Shero Rom and handed him a gift. May you and your horses live long.
he said in the Romani language.
Thank you, my friend.
We have many gypsies in Germany. They call themselves Senti. Quite a number of them are serving on the Russian front.
I saw Makita Kowal,
Beam with pride.
but I recalled what Danko had told us about the 5,000 Sinti who were brought to the Wodes ghetto, dying of typhus by the hundred, and the survivors being sent out to the Chumno concentration camp. I looked questioningly to my father.
Perhaps those on the front are Didako.
Half Romanis?
Or married to German woman. Who knows?
Sound of the dance from the jimmies is heard. 3 girls enter. One of them is Zoya.
From one of the tents.
Appeared a line of girls in ankle-length robes.
When they reached the platform, they spread out and began to dance.
Then a girl came out for a solo.
Zoya begins to dance her solo.
I felt my heart miss a beat. Never before had I seen such beauty. Not amongst the Romanis. Not even
Blonde waitress.
I had so admired.
Zoya's dance becomes more frenetic.
Eagerly, I followed the slim dancing body. The girl's slender hips outlined under her billowing cotton skirt. Who is she? I asked, my voice uncertain.
His grandmother says, Zoya Natkin. Last year she was 13. She is a woman now. Zoya's dance has its climax, and as she finishes, the Romani crowd applauds and cheers.
The girl left with quick, shuffling steps.
But the image of her outstretched form stayed with me.
Lights fade with music and laughter. Scene 5, the Cheryl Rome. Lights up on Demeter and Roman. They are outside the Cheryl Rome's wagon.
The next day, my father told the Cheryl Rom what Danko had said.
Danko is your cousin, but I've known him since he was born. He is a real spinner of tales, always was. Maybe he told you all that to cover up his own misbehavior. Who knows? Maybe he got into a fight with the German.
He did. That's why they put him in prison.
You see? And maybe the same thing happened before in Wotes. Anyway, where is he now? Why didn't he come and tell us himself?
He fled to the forest near Vosa to form a Romani partisan band to fight the Germans.
This also I don't believe. Another tale. We Romanis are brave and wild and not so crazy as to fight Germans with their guns and tanks. Look, Demeter, you see the German officers here yesterday, drinking with us, eating with us, enjoying our music and dances? And what did the commander of the garrison himself, a personal friend of mine, tell us? That we mustn't compare ourselves with the Jews. We are Christians. We are Iranians. We, like the Germans themselves. Isn't that what he said? And then, being so kind as to offer us warm houses for the winter.
Oh, God, and you believe him? Not me, not Danko, but this Colonel Kruger? Do you know what will happen to you if you accept his offer? There's a barbed wire all around the ghetto, isn't there? And once you are inside, you may not be able to get out. The next thing you know, a column of trucks will arrive to pick you all up and transport you to the Chelmo or Treblinka.
Tumri.
It's all nonsense.
Fear has big eyes. They took the Jews from the ghetto here, all of them. But what happened to us? Nothing. Our young men work in the German concrete factory and even get paid a bit. Our women move around freely, telling fortunes. We are even invited to the fortress to perform for the garrison. Whatever happened to some of the Romani troublemakers won't happen to us. We here enjoy the best of relations with the Germans. You go back to Warsaw, to your nightclub, and don't worry about us. We are Gawatske and Zika Romani.
Village and forest harmonies.
We'll winter here, and in the spring resume our traveling from village to village and forest to forest, as usual. And when you visit us next year for Christmas, you'll see us all back here, safe and sound.
My father looked at me as if wishing to summon my help.
Makita, you must pack and start leaving now. We must get to Hungary. There are no Germans there and no danger to us.
Are you crazy? You want us to travel in the winter? We'll freeze to death on the way. And even if some of us manage to get to Hungary, what shall we do there? You are a musician. You may find a job, but what shall the rest of us do in Hungary? We don't even speak their language.
My father looked at me again, helplessly.
Why don't you at least put the matter to the Council of Elders at the same time when you present them with the German offer of the ghetto houses?
For a while, Makita remained pensive.
He drew on his pipe.
All right. All right, I will do that right after our noontime meal. You come and state your case. I will state mine. I will listen to their advice and then I will announce my decision.
Lights fade. Scene 6, Zoya. Lights up on the Romani camp and Roman.
The sun came out and the patches of snow on the ground melted.
Men worked in front of their wagons,
preparing pots and cauldrons of fashioning chains, axes and sickles for sale to Polish,
Belarusian,
Ukrainian peasants.
I was taking a stroll through the camp, hoping to catch a glimpse of the girl who had danced so excitingly the previous night.
A bunch of girls have been on stage since the beginning of the scene, washing clothes in the river. Zoya has her back to us.
I noticed a string of girls on the riverbank doing their laundry. My eyes had focused on the last girl on the right, for I had recognized her long, slim back and dark shoulder-length hair. I started towards the river, but because I was anxious, my movements were swift and sudden.
The
girls looked up from the clothes they were washing to see what all the commotion was about.
When they saw me,
They started to giggle.
they quickly composed their faces and began rubbing the clothes harder on the scrubbing boards. Near each of them lay 2 piles of clothing.
Romanies never mix male and female clothes while washing them. And they never use soap, so their work is harder.
I pretended that I had just come to look at the river flowing by. I stopped close to Zoya, picked up a few pebbles, and casually tried to make rings on the surface of the water. I sneaked a glance at the squatting girl and
Met her slightly raised face with a curious glance in her black eyes and a tiny smile on her opened lips, showing a set of perfect small white teeth.
She
looked down quickly
before I at last summoned my courage to say, "Good morning, Zoya. You danced beautifully last night. I didn't know you were a gitana."
Neither did I. You are Roman Mirka from Warsaw, yes?
Yes, I said, speaking in a low voice so that the others would not hear. You have grown up very quickly since the last time I saw you. My eyes fell on her small but firm bosom, like 2 snowballs stretching her white blouse. I saw Zoya
Blush.
and quickly flipped a pebble held in my hand, making it skim the water. Can you make rings?
I don't know. I never tried.
Some of the girls started to
Some of the
pick up
girls
their
started
finished
to pick up their
laundry
finished
and
laundry and
leave.
leave.
Well, try now. She took a pebble from my hand and
Giggling through it. The stone sank immediately. No, I'm no good at that. You have finished school?
no, one more year to go. I doubt I'll finish though.
Why? It's good for a man to finish school.
We are not going back to Warsaw.
Why?
She threw me a strange sidelong glance.
Have you come back for good?
Yes, I think so. Zoya,
Put a blouse on the scrubbing board and worked on it for a while. This was the last piece of clothing she had to wash.
I searched for the words to say something, but they eluded me, so I just stood there, tongue-tied, until I saw her.
Wring water from the blouse.
Your family's laundry?
Yes, mine, my parents, and my brother's. She pushed one set of clothes under her arm and was about to do the same with the other.
Let me help you. I saw the girls.
Face suddenly become tense, the skin on her forehead tightening as she looked into the distance. No need, I can manage. Men were not to touch clothing defiled by women. Everyone knows that. Men must smoke and sit.
I blushed at her unease and my ignorance for stupid Romani superstitions. Then I glanced over my shoulder and saw
Coral Caval has been one of the men on stage working.
Coral Caval, some 50 meters away, in front of his wagon, staring at us.
Ira,
I heard Zoya call to a girl who had already left.
wait for me. With her own load under her arms, she quickly joined her friend.
Zoya exits.
Leaving me behind without uttering another word.
Lights crossfade to the Mirga camp. Demeter, Vala, Rosa, Sandu, and Mara are there. Scene 7, The Elders.
I continued watching the river for a while, then turned and walked back towards
my grandparents' wagon.
my father.
Pulled out his watch. Time,
He said.
Let's go.
My grandfather and I.
Rose.
Be firm, said his mother. Lights crossfade as the men begin to move across the camp. Coral approaches.
We saw
Coral coming towards us. Oh, sorry.
Us.
Coral wore top boots, a knife sticking out of the right one, its blade glistening in the midday sun. He thought he looked at Roman of this wasn't a real Romani. He could take him. He was just a city Romani. He hesitated.
As if wanting to say something.
But then continued, passing us without a word.
Lights crossfade to the elders' tent. Many Romani men, including Coral and Mikita, are here. There are 9 men in all, including Demeter, Sandu, and Roman.
In the tent, 2 rows of chairs, 4 to a row, had been arranged.
With Demeter and his son, we are 9 in the tent.
Yes, that's true. We are 9. Let's start then.
I glanced furtively at my father. 9 was lucky, 7 unlucky. Superstitions, always superstitions.
We are gathered here to consider Colonel Cougar offer of houses for the winter, and also what Demeter Merga is going to tell us.
On the matter of the houses. I want to speak on the matter of the houses.
No, let Demeter speak.
My father
got up. He sized up the faces of all the elders, then began.
He spoke for a long time, missing no detail of what Danko had told him.
He outlined his plan of going west-westster.
From forest to forest.
Until reaching Hungary, while this was still possible. And so, he concluded, if you decide to leave, there is no need to discuss Cougar's offer.
Right.
The elders do not decide. They advise. I decide. So now I want to tell you what I think about all of this. And then you can speak your mind. I say, fear has big eyes. In that Wots ghetto where Danko saw 5,000 Romanies, I am sure there were more than 500. They probably disobeyed orders, maybe refused to join labor brigades. The Germans do not take young people to work in their factories, on the railways, and the roads. Like here, where we have most of our young men working in their concrete factories, but there are plenty amongst other tribes, amongst the Senti, especially the Laleri Senti,
The dumb Hromanis.
who say that life is too short for a Romani to work.
Danko would not say 5,000 unless there were 5,000. My son does not lie.
Mikita smiled tolerantly. If he were my son, Gregory, I would have said the same. But I have known Danko as long as you have, since he was born. I do not mean he lies, he just exaggerates. He always liked telling tall stories about Polish girls who fell in love with him, about noblemen who invited him to their mansions for dinner and wine.
That's not the same. This is serious. This is a serious matter, a matter of life and death.
They grow soft once they settle in big towns. They get easily frightened and spread rumors.
I never trusted town Poles, and the same goes for town Romanis.
I am also from town, just like Danko. Don't you trust me?
Of course we trust you, but all you know comes from Danko. I am not only the head of the Kumpani Demeter, I am also the chief judge of it. I can't base my decision on hearsay. Here we obey the Germans. They wanted our young men to fight and work for them, and so they work for them. That's why our situation is different, and nothing will happen to us. We are peaceful people, and we obey the law. That's why Colonel Cougar is a personal friend of mine. He appreciates our help in this war effort.
Yes, we don't make trouble. We don't get into trouble.
We are Aryans, not Jews.
They invited us to come to the fortress, to dance and wrestle for them.
And they have offered us warm houses.
That's different. I don't want houses for us. They have toilets inside of them, not outside, inside. They stink and they probably bring diseases.
And they have bathtubs. Who needs a bathtub when we have a river?
It's a different way of life. Fine for Demeter and his family, but in all my 90 years, I haven't lived in a house, and I won't start now.
Anthony Puma enters, another elder.
There was a rustle behind the men.
They turned
their heads.
Turn their heads.
At the sight of Antony Puma, dressed smartly for town with a tie and a felt hat on his head. I have been there, Cheryl Rome.
Wait a moment. We are talking about... Oh, all right. Tell us what you saw.
Antony wiped his face. The German soldiers watching over the area let me in. I walked around the ghetto. That's why it took me so long. All around it, there is barbed wire. There's only one way of getting in or out. Through a gate on Hagello Street, the soldiers let me see a few houses. There is no furniture in any of them. The Germans took it all.
We don't need any furniture.
The houses smell terribly. Nobody cleaned them after they took all the Jews away.
We clean them. Look, why did the Kildari accept the offer? They are moving in any day now.
Why don't we wait and see if they like it?
And see what happens to the Kelderari.
All right. I will tell Colonel Kruger that we have never lived in houses and want to wait and see if the Kildari are happy in them. And I will tell him that this was your decision.
The elders nodded their approval.
Now, on the other matter, what do you advise? I want to hear each of you.
They spoke in turn.
Rudolph Puma.
Thuro Grechko.
And Franco Notkin.
All said they should remain in their winter encampment and not move.
Rudolph Puma suggested that if things go worse, they could start traveling towards Hungary in the spring, since they would have to travel anyway.
If you live that long.
My father
remarked with harsh sarcasm.
Gregory, father of Donko, rose to his feet. He believed his sons and Demeter's warning. He said, would Demeter have come all the way from Warsaw? Would he have left his home and place of work unless the danger was really great? Do the elders, does the Shero Rome believe that the Germans would limit their action to town or Romanies and leave nomadic tribes alone? He sat back, wiping away a few drops of sweat that had appeared on his forehead.
Anthony, you haven't spoken yet. Anthony, you haven't spoken yet.
I wasn't here when you discussed the matter.
Sandu, I haven't heard from you. You have said nothing so far.
And I will say nothing now. It is my son's proposal we are discussing, and I don't think it is proper for his father to speak.
Nikita rose from his place. You have all spoken, or had a chance to speak. Now, it's up to me to decide. I am responsible for you, for all of my people, and my decision is that we stay.
What? You are wrong, Shinoram. You are just promoting the stupidity of your people. You need to join the real world and recognize what has happened. I found myself shouting as I saw my father's face
turn grim, his eyelids closing in despair.
You didn't speak all this time, boy, and you will not speak now. I repeat, it's my decision to stay, not to move. You, Demeter, can go back to Warsaw with your family.
I cannot go back, and I will not go back.
That's for you to decide. I now declare the meeting of the Council of Elders closed.
Lights fade. Scene 8, Koro. Lights up on the Mirga campsite. Sandu, Demeter, and Roman enter, followed by Koro.
Just as we were reaching home from the meeting, I saw
Orukoval coming out of the wagon where
Zoya Natkin
live with herself, the son of the Sharo Rome.
Was walking straight towards us as if he had waiting for our return.
The meeting finished.
Yes, your father decided to stay.
Good.
He turned abruptly to me.
I want to talk to you, Roman Murad.
His voice
was strong and firm, brooking no opposition alone.
My father
turned questioningly to me.
All right, I said. Alone. Father
waved his hand and walked away.
My grandfather
with a glance over his shoulder.
Following him.
Sandu and Demeter exit.
You'd better.
Koro.
Snapped, fiercely thrusting his chin out, his fingers touching his handle of his knife sticking out of the boot. You better stay away from my girl.
I don't know what you mean, I answered.
I saw you talking to her this morning. She has been promised to me, you understand?
By her parents.
We are getting married in the spring.
When
she is 15.
I didn't know.
Well, you know now. So keep away, I said.
For a moment, Koro
looked straight into
my eyes,
as if trying to impress
his warning upon me. Then he left,
going back to
Zoya Natkin's wagon.
Koro and the Natkins exit.
I remained glued to the spot, my throat tightening. I felt an impotent rage. Agavet Kai and Wejitska I thought with scorn. But how could I take all this? How could I accept the prejudices and superstitions and parental agreements and a soapless caravan existence after living most of my life like the rest of the world? All of the world except for the Ramanis.
Light crossfades to Mirga camp and Demeter squatting by light that reflects a fire.
But my anger quickly dissipated as I saw my father
squatting over a stack of branches and striking a flint to start the fire. What did Koro want?
Oh, nothing. I managed to smile, just to welcome me to the camp. What are you doing here?
Warming up the ground. Once it is done, we shall build a wooden hut over it, for us for the winter.
We are not going then?
No, son. I can't run away. I can't leave my parents. I'll stay and do all in my power to persuade them to go. Perhaps this stubborn old father of mine will realize that I am right. Or perhaps we shall indeed manage to stay safe until the winter is over.
Scene 9, the heart. Lights up on Rosa in firelight with a deck of fortune-telling cards. Projection, the Ace of Hearts.
The Ace of Hearts has been a symbol of love for thousands of years. We know that the heart itself, heart is life itself. Intersection of these meanings is to say that by loving, we give life to our lives. But love is more than that of a man and a woman. Love can be that feeling we have for our parents, children, country, work, anything that deeply touches our lives, which we put our heart into. It is always sad to see people searching for love, the romantic kind, and at the same time ignoring the love extended to them by their children, family, or friends. The Ace of Hearts gives guidance to the emotions that we say come from the heart.
Lights fade on Rosa. Scene 10, winter. Lights up on Roman and the Polsko-Romani camp.
Several weeks had passed since our arrival in the camp. Nothing had happened to us, and
Mikita Koval missed no opportunity of pointing out to my father how baseless his fears had been.
winter had now arrived and was keeping everybody busy.
Every day,
Every day, women brought buckets
of cold clay from the ground,
clean from the grounds of the fortress.
The men labored at wedging bits of rag around their
And the
window
window
frames.
frames.
They filled the empty spaces under their wagons with snow and packed it solid so that the wind would not blow underneath.
In each of the huge tents, they built a square fireplace of stones,
with stacked wood burning day and night, so that their best friends,
their horses,
wintering there,
would keep warm and comfortable.
When the young men went to work in the concrete factory, they wore sheepskin, gloves, and fur hats with ear flaps.
And the girls who roamed around the towns telling Polish women their fortunes were clad in not one, but 2 flannel shirts and woolen shawls wrapped tightly around their heads.
We had food, rationed like everyone else, but were able to supplement it with dried mushrooms, berries, wild garlic, and nuts, which we had gathered in the forest and stored away for winter, the way squirrels do. Still, we were never sad. Promenies rarely are, so there was plenty of music, songs, and bursts of laughter floating from wagon on chilly nights, especially at Christmas time, when a big pine tree decorated with glistening gold and silver tinsel was set up in the middle of the camp to proclaim our devotion and our fear of God.
Lights fade on lights that are reminiscent of a Christmas tree. Scene 11, New Year's Eve, lights up on the Mirga hut.
It was 7 in the evening on New Year's Eve when I heard the jingling of bells and came out of my hut.
A man on the high front seat of a sleigh was pulling the reins to bring his pair of horses to a halt.
My father looked up and shook his head,
hardly believing his own eyes. Count Peshkovsky?
The man smoothed his short-trimmed mustache and clapped his hands on
father's shoulder.
Janusz, to you, Janusz, remember me?
Do I remember you? I haven't seen you for God knows how long.
I was in Paris after my father's death all those years ago.
And I was in Warsaw. This is my son, Roman.
My God, this blonde Polish-looking boy?
Well, that was rude. Janusz Peszkowski said, shaking my hand.
Time flies. It seems only yesterday that I was challenging you to race me to the high road. Well, you were a better horseman.
A better bareback rider.
Yes, Count Peszkowski chuckled. Tell me, Demeter, why did your people move away? It wasn't comfortable enough for you on our grounds on the banks of the Oshkuvska River?
When your father and you and your mother went to live in Paris, no one in your manor needed our services any longer. So we moved over to the Bug River, closer to town. You know, better income.
Listen, Demeter.
Count Peszkowski?
Now grabbed
my father's
shoulders.
Please come to my party tonight. You, your wife, your son, of course, and maybe 2 of the other violinists. Where is that girl? The beautiful dancer?
Zoya. I volunteered eagerly.
Right, Zoya. Just a small group to entertain us, like the old days when my father was alive. Please?
Of course we will. Gladly, gladly.
We should have a koluk.
He turned and reached for the bottle.
Let's drink to the old times, Demeter, to the times when we had great New Year's parties with gypsy music, followed by koluks when sleighs would race each other, and the winners would give a kiss to the most beautiful girl. Do you know who that girl will be next? My daughter. Yes, Demeter, that's how fast time flies.
Crossfade to a sleigh ride.
The performers ensconced themselves comfortably in the soft seats of the sleigh, tucking their legs under a rug. Then, amidst the shouts
of wishes for a happy new year,
the sleigh turned and we drove away on the crisp, snowy path. The sky was almost as bright as day, as the bells of the horses' harnesses rang joyfully. I raised my face to look at Zoya.
sitting opposite,
Me.
her cheeks flushed from cold and excitement.
This was the first time in a month that I had been close to her. Whenever I passed her in the camp, I would look straight ahead, pretending not to see her. I saw her raise her head,
Conscious of
my staring.
the skin tightening over her forehead,
Turned to my mother.
and said quickly, I have never been to a nobleman's mansion. Is it very elegant and rich?
Oh, yes. In the old times, when the kings ruled Poland, the noblemen used to invite Ramani to live on their grounds and entertain them during the party and hunting seasons. Not only did we dance for them, our bears danced too.
She spoke softly, as if telling a fairy tale to a child.
A Romani king, Jan Markinovitz, used to be feted by his friend Prince Stanislaw Radziwill, and often took the prince for a ride in his carriage pulled by 6 trained bears, with a liveried monkey sitting in the front seat, next to a liveried Romani coachman.
Zoya smiled dreamily. I would have loved to have lived then.
The countryside was quiet. Time and time again, my eyes rested on Zoya, but she looked steadily at the road, at the trees on either side, and the occasional glimmer of lights from peasant huts in the forest. Then the view suddenly opened out, and I could see the 2-story white manor house in the distance.
Crossfade to the inside of a manor house, and all the guests.
As we made our entrance, the talk stopped all at once.
The Count introduced
my father
to his
petite, vivacious wife,
then snapped to a waiter, vodka, vodka for our guests. Then all the glasses had been filled. The Count raised his own and said, Jeszcze Polska nie zginęła. Poland is not yet lost.
We all
drink
to that.
As my father
looked around,
the Count, as if guessing the reason for his scrutiny, said, No Germans here. Not at my party.
Throughout the dinner, the orchestra played.
My father played
his violin.
And Zoya
and my
mother danced,
assisted by my accordion and my
mother's tambourine.
The Polish nobility danced mazurkas and operex among the
worn-out mahogany sofas and armchairs, and brass ornamented empire tables under the dusty chandeliers and the hunting trophies of generations of Peszkowskis displayed on the walls for that night.
For that one night, these people were forgetting that there was no Poland, that in 1939 the Russians had stripped them of their lands and titles, and that the Germans, who attacked the Russians 2 years later, kept them in poverty.
They were all trying to make their glorious past come alive again in the dawn of the new year, 1943.
Suddenly,
Count Morsky, a handsome man with a dashing mustache, came up to Zoya, grabbed her hand, and
tried to drag
her on the parqueted floor.
Come, Gypsy, dance with me.
Zoya pulled away.
And I abruptly stopped playing, stepping between.
The pole.
And the frightened girl.
We came here to entertain you, not to dance with you, I said stiffly.
The Count pushed
me
sharply aside,
and I fell to the floor.
He threw his arms around Zoya, then give me a kiss. A gypsy girl's kiss on New Year's Eve brings luck.
Furiously, I got back on my feet and lurched forward, clamping my hands on his
shoulders.
Zoya fled, hiding behind
My
mother.
Immediately, Count Pashkovsky rushed forward and
forcibly pulled the pole away in spite of his protests.
that a gypsy, me, had
laid his hand on him.
Play! Just play, Pashkovsky shouted.
My father
started a Krakowiak.
Music plays, crossfade, time passes.
It was 3 a.m. when the last sleigh drove away.
Seen off by the host.
Our band was still by his side playing until the last carriage was out of sight.
The Count slipped an envelope into
my father's
pocket
and threw his arms around him. Thank you for coming. Thank you so much. And perhaps he, too, was drunk, or merely because he was a Pole, he bestowed a kiss on father's
cheek.
Then he kept silent, his face troubled, until all the sleighs had driven some 100 meters. Forgive my foolish desire to have it one last night pretending to live in a free Poland. But Demeter, I came to your camp straight from the fortress the moment that I heard the news. To warn you, tomorrow morning the Germans are going to surround your camp and take back your horses. I know how important the horses are to you. If they do take your horses, you will no longer be able to travel.
Painfully,
my father
closed his eyes and drew a deep sigh. Or run away if we have to.
Yes, Janusz Pashkovsky repeated, his voice sinking. Or run away if you have to. I thought, Demeter, that perhaps you could leave at once. But not a word, remember, to anyone. I'm sticking my neck out for you.
My father
clasped the Count's gloved hands and shook them with gratitude. Thank you, Janusz. Thank you very much. Not a word, I promise. Not a word. And we'll leave by night on side roads.
It was the first time since the two men met again, after years of not seeing each other,
that my father
had called his boyhood friend by his first name. And now you better return to your camp and start packing. I'd rather you walk home from here. I'll wait.
Roman saw his father's
arms lifting to embrace the Count.
Go at once, and I hope to see you again, my friend.
Transition to leaving the manor house.
I apologize, my script fell. It kind of crashed.
We're on the bottom of page 71, but I'll keep speaking for you till you give me the thumbs up that you're good.
You got it.
Roman says, only when the horses had passed through the gate and the white manor house disappeared from their view did he dare look at Zoya.
She looked back at
him.
Thank you.
She
I
heard
her
him
whisper as my gut filled with two unknown feelings.
Scene, lights fade. Scene 12. Danger. Lights up on Rosa. Firelight. Projection. The 5 of spades.
The road symbolizes your path in life. The road ahead may be smooth, indicating that there are no major problems in your life at this time, or the road may be less smooth. The 5 of spades indicates that you will soon be moving on and leaving behind all that you know.
Wind. Lights fade on Rosa.
We reached our hut.
His grandmother.
She was sitting darning men's socks. Mara was combing her doll.
My grandfather.
when the news.
I have something important to tell you, Mara. Go and play outside.
The girl looked up, startled, but obediently picked up her doll.
Grandmother stopped darning the socks and looked.
At my father's.
The Germans are going to pick up the camp and take all our horses. Tomorrow morning.
How do you know?
Grandfather asked.
Nervously.
Father hesitated.
I promised to send them to warn you, not to involve them. If the Germans found out, you would pay dearly for it. I will tell you, remember, no one must know where this information came from.
And he told them, my grandfather.
Put away the back. No longer. He sat down. I have. He said. His shoulders. His voice low and forlorn. But it took me and Rosa all over the country. When we ate, he ate. And when we drank, he drank.
It's more than just losing horses, Father. Once they get them, we are stuck. They can come here anytime and round us all up. We must leave at once tonight. By morning, when the Germans get here, they'll be far away.
Grandmother nodded, deep in thought. You must go to the Shirogam at once.
I'll see him then. And meanwhile, start packing.
Grandmother burst into
uneasy laughter, showing her few crooked yellow teeth. What's there to pack? It will take us half an hour to gather together all that we need to take with us.
Roman, we must warn the Calderari. Go to town towards the ghetto. When you see a Calderari outside, any Calderari, tell him to warn their chief Dombrowski. But don't you dare enter the ghetto. Remember.
I won't, I said. I'll go right away.
Crossfade to an elders meeting already in progress.
All right. Look, you tried to scare us before, 3 months ago. And what happened? Nothing. Gossip, rumors. That's what it was, and that's what it is now. How can I, who is responsible for all of us, evaluate your information if you refuse to tell me where it came from?
My God, what does it take to put some sense into your head?
Indignity. Mikita rose to his feet. You know to whom you are talking?
I know. A stubborn Romani, for whom it is more important to prove that he is right than to safeguard his people.
The elders can only advise, nothing more. I decide. And it is my decision that unless you tell me who told you this stupid piece of gossip, and I'm not going to pay any heed to it. And now I'm going to go see my friend Colonel Cougar and ask him straight to his face. He won't lie to me.
Don't you dare. If you do, they'll surround our camp immediately.
Mikita smiled. You want to hear once more that the elders support me?
The elders meeting freezes as a crossfade to Roman on the road occurs.
Within minutes, I had reached the high road, then turned right, walking fast, anxious to get back to the camp as soon as possible. No Germans were on the street, not even any Polish people. I crossed the road and threw myself into the shadow of the 2-storied houses, flanking Jagallo Street. Clinging close to the wall, I reached the point where the barbed wire veered away from the main road to the entrance of the ghetto. But I hoped I would find somebody on the other side of the wire, call him and pass the message on to him. With my heart pounding, I continued to creep along the barbed wire, searching for some sign of human life. There weren't any. A storm seemed to have passed through this place, sweeping everyone away with it. Suddenly, I heard a distant neighing, and after a while, the view of a cobblestone square inside the ghetto opened up. Me and I saw a big tent there. Through the flapping canvas entrance, I could see the horses inside.
Enter a Polish woman.
Hey!
I instinctively started to run.
Stop, you silly boy. Come here quickly.
I hurried back.
You escaped? But come inside the house, quick.
Crossfade to inside the Polish woman's house.
I slipped into the warm room, and the women.
Close the door behind you.
And the silver lamp hanging on the wall through an eerie light over the old woman, tin frame purposes, spinning yarn on the spinning wheel.
She looked up at me.
With hostility and fear. You better get them fast, Sophia.
All right. Isn't there one drop of compassion left in you, Mother?
What does she mean? Is there anyone else here?
It's all right. You can come out. It's another gypsy.
Slowly the door rattled open and
A swarthy, high-cheeked face appeared in it. It belonged to a tall boy.
about my own age.
You are not the Kelderari.
The Romani said in a dialect slightly different from what I was used to. No, I'm from the camp near the Bug River. What has happened?
The boy slid now out of hiding. They took them all, the Germans, and left the horses behind.
When?
Just an hour ago.
My whole body went limp with terror. My God, how?
Shortly after the trucks brought the young men back home from the factory, they came back, this time full of German soldiers. Some of the soldiers surrounded the ghetto while others broke in, burst into the houses, and began shoving the people out with their rifle butts. They gave us no time to pack. Our children cried, our women screamed. I managed to hide in an attic, and from there I could hear a German officer trying to calm the people down, telling my father that this was just a resettlement, that they would also be taking all of you away tomorrow, and that we would then be moved to another place to work and live.
Resettlement? That means a concentration camp.
The younger woman glanced at her mother. You'd better go, she said with a sigh. It's dark now. You will manage to get out of town.
Come with me to our camp. We shall be leaving immediately, I'm sure. You can go with us.
Are you sure that will be all right? I am Kelderari.
You are Romani, aren't you?
All right, let's go. We're not welcome here anyway.
He extended his hand.
I'm Pavel Dombrovsky. Let's go.
I turned to the young woman. Thank you, Pani Zofia.
Lights crossfade to the Polska Romani camp.
As Paul and I returned to the camp and to find my father and the elders, Zoya's wagon was nearby and I had walked towards it, eager to see that the girl I had ridden in a sleigh with hours before was safe. I quickened my pace when suddenly a voice shouted.
Coro enters.
Looking for someone. And who's this?
No, just walking. And Paul Dombrowski, the son of the Kelderari chief, to see your father.
Why don't you race me this afternoon?
I'm not a very good rider, and we must see the Sheroram.
You mean they don't race horses in Warsaw? I mean, they even bet on who comes first. I'll give you 30-meter head start for a half a kilometer race and bet you 1 German mark. How about that?
I shook my head because I was in a hurry and didn't have time to deal with Koro. At the same moment, I heard a rustle.
Zoya enters.
And Zoya appeared in the door next to Coral.
At the sight of the two of them together, my face darkened.
Then I challenge you to a wrestling match,
Koro said,
cockily eager for his girl to witness.
My expected refusal. I don't wrestle. And again, we are in a hurry.
Oh, no. But a couple of hours ago, you were ready to wrestle with a drunken Pole who could barely stand on his 2 feet. Big hero.
I blinked, but remembered that in the Harmony camp, news spreads fast.
He defended me.
But Koro paid no attention to her. Remember what I told you when you settled here. And I repeat, stay away from her if you don't want to get hurt.
He stood still, looking at me.
Fiercely and waiting for me to leave.
I glanced at Zoya, who,
After her momentary revolt, fell silent.
I turned and Powell and I hurried away.
As Koro followed them at a safe distance.
Crossfade to the elders with Roman and Pavel running in. Koro enters shortly after.
The hum of voices abruptly ceased.
All the faces turned towards us.
Roman says, "They have taken them all.
Apologize again.
All the Keldarari, an hour ago. Only he, the son of their chief Dombrovsky, managed to escape."
My God. It's even worse than I thought. He moved almost viciously toward the Shararam. Do you need any further proof that I was right?
Mikita Koval, speechless, looked around the
Terrors
Stricken faces
of the elders.
Suddenly, a broken man, no longer the self-assured leader of the camp.
Gregory Mueller jumped to his feet. We no longer have time to talk, he said. He clenched his fists and shook it at Mikita. You were wrong all along, and I said so 3 months ago, but you, too. He turned to the elders. None of you believed Dimitri. Do you believe him now? He paused, waiting.
No one said
a word.
Not even the Shararam.
We must run while there is still time, whether the Shararam agrees or not.
Mikita Koval raised his head.
In a last attempt,
Tell us, Dombronsky, tell us what happened.
Pavel Dombrovsky told them what he
had told me. Then he added,
The Germans don't have enough trucks. They're all at the front. So today they took us, tomorrow they take you. And then the same trucks, as they have no other vehicles, will return and bring the horses to the fortress. I know their arrangements. I heard the officer tell it to my father.
I now ask you, the Council of Elders, to choose a new Shararam. Yes, a man capable of leading us out of this mortal danger threatening us all. The only man who has foreseen this day, Demeter Murga.
Sounds of dogs barking through the rest of the scene.
Suddenly the howl of a dog outside the tent broke through all other sounds, and all the dogs of the camp immediately joined in.
You hear that? Romany dogs don't howl unless the danger is real.
What are we waiting for? Franco Notkin asked sarcastically. For the owls to hoot also? They will if we remain here.
Tsuro Grechko got to his feet. I am the oldest here, and I say we leave at once. And I say Demeter Mirga is our new leader. Please accept Demeter.
You can't! Mikita Koval rose from his chair, trying to oppose the move. You have selected me as your leader for life!
In unusual circumstances, we can change our leader. In unusual circumstances, we stop advising, we decide. This is our unwritten law. I'm now putting the matter to a vote. Please raise your hands, elders, if you want Demeter Mirga to become our new Sherarom.
The 8 hands of the
The
elders
elder
shot up.
shot up.
Demeter Mirga, do you accept our call to become our leader?
I do.
Nikita Koval left the table and walked out of the tent.
Nikita exits.
We cannot go through town. People will see our caravan heading south.
Also, there is a German barricade now on the main road.
And we cannot go east. East is the fortress.
Oh, we must go north, Franco Natkin said. It's the only road left to us. It will not lead us abroad, but it's the only way to get out.
You're wrong. We can't take any of the high roads. If we do, the Germans will find us in no time.
So how shall we escape?
West.
West is the river.
The river is frozen. Our wagons will cross it, then find a country road leading south. It won't occur to the Germans that we crossed it. In 1 hour, not later than 1 hour, I want to see you and your traveling wagons and ready to move. Spread the word.
Crossfade to the Romani camp.
Word spread fast.
The Romani women
The Romani women packed their few family belongings and carried them
to their
canvas-covered wagons.
While the men led the horses from the big tent toward the river and harnessed them.
Harness them.
The dogs stopped howling.
And the children now tied them to the axles so they could run alongside the wagon.
On my father's order, I went around the camp, telling people to keep their voices low, even though we were far from the main road. I saw Koro
harnessing 2 horses in his wagon.
He gave me a look.
Full of hatred.
I saw to it that Paweł Dombrowski
was allocated to a place on the cart, carrying the unmarried brother of
my mother, driven by my
Uncle Rudolph.
I noticed that the Natkins were left to fend for themselves.
With Zoya struggling hard to help her parents.
And I deliberately went to help her. Finally, I lent a hand to
Gregory Muller, gathering up his ironwork, which he hoped to sell on the road.
Can I buy a knife from you?
Gregory picked up a long, fancily chiseled knife. Against the enemy, eh? If the need arises.
Yes, if the need arises. How much?
Nothing. A cousin of mine and the son of the Shero Rome pays me nothing.
Thank you.
The lights crossfade. Twilight approaches.
The wagons rolled through a vast snowfield, with hardly any trees or brushwood.
Don't rush,
he shouted.
Keep in line, 1 wagon at a time so we don't break the ice. Go, Rudolph! We start crossing the river right now. You go the other way, over the path, and then drive 100 meters or so over the high road in the opposite direction. Be sure no one sees you. On your way, drop some clothing and some posts to the ground to mislead the Germans so that they will think that we are heading north.
All right, Rudolph Puma smiled. It's an order, Sherarom. He smacked his lips at his horse, lashed at him with the whip, and turned his cart around.
Pavel and Rudolph exit.
By the time most of the wagons were on the other side of the bug, it had begun to snow. The white curtain of the falling snow made us feel secure and calm. In his seat, my father was leaning forward,
trying to penetrate the light darkness in front of him, so that the caravan wouldn't miss any country road that we might come upon.
I'm sorry, son.
My grandfather muttered.
I said I knew better than you because I was a wise old man, but I was wrong, son. I was really just a silly old man. That's what I was.
Lights fade. Scene 13, on the run. Lights up on a caravan traveling.
An hour later, we were traveling. The snow started to fall heavily.
Lights crossfade as the sun is rising.
A short time later, with our wagon leading the way, the caravan started again.
We went straight through the village. There was no other way.
Once we had left the village, we lashed our horses forward in a desperate effort to cover the open road between the huts and the forest as fast as possible.
Time and again, my father
looked over his shoulder to make sure that no informer passed us by.
Lights crossfade to scene 16. Scene 16, real danger. Lights fade up on the caravan at rest. Projection, near Lukov.
It was in the early afternoon the next day when we heard
Trucks! I can hear trucks rumbling from the side opposite to where we came.
There must be a road there. Perhaps the one from Lukov, which skirts the forest?
We now heard not only the rumble of engines, but also faint German voices. Then suddenly, the motors were shut off.
The distant barking of military commands could be heard.
We held our breath.
Frozen in our places.
They have stopped on the road.
I made up my mind. I was not going to ask my father for permission. I decided to edge towards the area from which the voices came. If the danger became real, if the Germans started combing the forest, I would run back to warn the others. Summoning my courage, I started to walk slowly away from the wagon so that no one would suspect my plan.
But Pavel Dombrovsky
Followed me.
I'm coming with you. His tone brooking no opposition.
Crossfade to the road.
We walked a few hundred meters.
The German voices.
Growing louder by the minute, and then, unmistakably, they were joined by the cries and the
wailing of women.
The well stopped.
And motioned me to proceed very carefully, dashing from tree to tree, making no noise at all, avoiding the branches.
As we almost reached the edge of the forest, a view of the road opened up in front of us.
Enter German officers, Romani men shoveling snow and Romani women holding babies.
Romani men who were shoveling snow from a large ditch seemed to sink deeper and deeper until only their faces could be seen.
Halt! He motioned to the soldiers. They formed a line and went up to the ditch and raised their rifles. The officer lifted his hand and abruptly brought it down.
Sound cue of rifle shots throughout the theater. Romani men fall.
The Romani women with their babies pushed out of the trucks with rifle butts.
My throat tightened as I watched the screaming, cursing women.
Many
of them throwing themselves at their oppressors, clawing their faces, tearing their hair.
They were hit by the rifle butts or booted down and then shoved ahead until they too slid into the ditch.
Those who in their rage thought the Nazis had their babies wrested from them. And in front of their mothers' eyes, the babies' heads were smashed against tree trunks.
Blood splattered all around.
The children's bodies were thrown into the ditch.
As the lamentations and cries for mercy got louder, the SS officer impatiently gestured to the machine gunner, who lowered his fire directly into the ditch.
Sound cue. Gunshot fired throughout the theater.
No one remained alive.
Lights fade on dead Romanis and Germans exiting.
All the vehicles turned right around and then rumbled back towards Lukov. Only when the sound had faded into the distance did I recover my voice. I walked over to
Pavel,
who was weeping.
This is what they probably did to my family.
Stop crying, I said harshly. We must get back and tell my father what we have seen.
They will get us too. We are doomed.
Crossfade back to the caravan.
No one in the camp even noticed our absence.
They had all
They
heard
had
the
all heard the
lamentation
screams of the dying.
I went to my father, took him aside, and told him what I had seen.
His eyes blinked nervously as he tried to live up to his role of the Sheraram and make a decision. He could not do so. I suppose they don't bother to send small groups to extermination camps. He walked on a few steps. His face always remained haggard. But then,
As he stopped by a tree, all by himself,
he wasn't unable any longer to control himself.
for the first time in my life, I saw my father cry. For his family, for himself, for his people.
Lights crossfade to just Demeter. Sound of the Romani song Chigani Humanush. Hymn of the Romani, Romani anthem.
The whole world hates us, we're chased, we're cursed, condemned to wandering throughout life. The mountain is green, the forest as well. Fortune takes flight and then returns again. This sort of anxiety cuts into our skin. The world is hypocritical, the whole world stands against us. We survive as hounded thieves, but barely a nail have we stolen at the foot of a bloody Jesus. God have mercy, deliver us from our trials. Da da dee da 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 dee da da.
Scene 14, Spring. Lights up on Rosa. Firelight. Projection, 3 of clubs.
The Three of Clubs tells us that of great luck or success. However, this is not by chance. The Three of Clubs implies luck or good fortune due to one's efforts. Ramanis were able to use the first domesticated animal, the horse, better by inventing the horseshoe. Thus, our efforts at inventing, pursuing, or working very hard at something will bring us good fortune.
Lights crossfade on the caravan, ready to move. No more Romani clothing.
As time passed, we moved, and my father had us leave our dogs and our Ramani clothing in order to hide ourselves a little better.
We traveled.
A few carts
at a time.
Separated by long intervals.
I strangely thought of Warsaw, of my school and the boys at school playing football, our nice apartment, our secure jobs at the wine cellar. But then I would think of this life, this movement over land, and the adventures I was having. And of course I thought of Zoya and what my future might be with her.
And at the day's end, we would gather in a big forest familiar to all of us.
There, the Sheraram will take account of his people.
There is one thing which my father could not alter.
The faces.
The swarthy faces.
But then there were swarthy peasants too.
As we started along the forest path to the road,
I was intensely aware that the most dangerous stage of our journey would be the first one. Occasionally, I turned my head to glance at
Zoya.
And to enjoy
The flutter of eyelashes and cheerful twinkling of her dark eyes.
just basking in the happiness of loving.
And being loved.
With no one but the two of us sharing our secret. I looked at my father.
He was grinning to himself, secure and unafraid.
I felt as if his youth, all his spring, summer, and autumn traveling youth had
come back to him.
My father
was a Romani at heart.
And nothing could change that.
Crossfade, time passes.
Some nights I could not sleep because the nights were so beautiful and I was acutely aware of the Night King's tent close to ours. One night I got up and walked between the trees towards a stream. Suddenly I stopped. My heart skipped a beat.
Zoya was not in her tent. She was right here, leaning against a tree, watching the reflection of the new moon in the water.
Zoya!
Immediately she turned.
To me. I ran to her.
Shutting her eyes, she fell into my arms.
Recklessly, I lifted her head and brushed my face against hers until my mouth
found her eager, parted lips. With a stifled cry, she wrapped her arms
around my back, hugging me.
To herself with all her strength.
Finally, I managed to tear myself away for a moment.
Gently lowered her to the ground and then
lay next to her on the grass.
Her ear close, inviting endearments and confessions.
But all I could do was to murmur her name over and over again and kiss her hair, her forehead, her neck, and then
find her mouth again. I have never kissed anyone before you.
Neither have I, Zoya, I confessed.
I have loved you, Roman, always. Every Christmas when you returned to camp, I suffered. Oh God, how I suffered. I thought we had lost you to the big city, to Warsaw, and I tried to find solace in my engagement to Koro. But I would rather die than marry Koro.
I lifted her head, looking straight into her eyes, which, as I gazed at her,
her mouth tightened as she
hugged me ardently again and whispered,
"Take me, Roman, please."
No.
Take me, don't you understand?
Her face was flushed, almost feverish.
If I am yours, then they can do nothing. They can't keep us apart. They must marry us. They can't change the Ramani ways.
No, I repeated. I don't want it that way.
Her skin tautened over her face. She stopped listening.
She grabbed my face,
sank her mouth into mine,
making my head whirl.
And then again thrust her body against
me,
twisting her long legs around mine and her arms around
my neck, drawing me
to herself, brooking no resistance because she knew I could not resist.
But suddenly I heard a rustling of leaves and heavy footsteps approaching. I slid away from the girl.
Enter Koro.
And looked up in front of me.
Stood Koro, the boy face filled with hatred, and his hands moved to the top of his boot.
I jumped to my feet.
Zoya shrieked and backed away.
I told you, Koro said through clenching teeth, to keep away from her. But you didn't, and now you'll pay for it.
He pounced at me,
ready to thrust the knife into his chest.
But I managed to dodge.
And the blade only tore
my sleeve and grazed my arm.
You'll not come out of this alive.
With eyes focused on him, my hand darted to the top of my boot. I whipped out my knife. I'm not afraid of you.
As Zoya covered her mouth with her hand and whimpered.
And we began stalking each other, knives in our hands.
Then I jumped.
And succeeded in kicking him in the groin. You son of a crow! He yelled and then hatefully turned.
To Zoya.
And you, a whore. Don't think I didn't see it. I saw it all. You deserve each other. You can have him. Dead.
Pavel enters.
Suddenly, from behind the trees emerged Pavel Dombrovsky. Are you both crazy? Just at the time our lives are in danger, all you can do is fight each other.
He drew his knife first.
A Romani trying to knife a Romani will be declared a Majordo. Is that what you want, Koro?
He is not a Romani. He is a Gaji.
He is the son of the Shero Rom.
It was like rubbing salt into Koro's open wound. Once more, he lunged, trying
to stab me.
Zoya cried out with fright.
But once again, I dodged the assault and grabbed Koro's hand.
With our faces close to each other, filled with hatred, it now became a contest of strength.
I had no idea what power Zoya's love had given me until this very moment. Until I
forced Koro to unclench his fist, letting the knife fall onto the ground.
Pavel dashed forward and grabbed it.
Koro backed away a few steps, then plunged out. All right, go ahead. Kill me.
We heard footsteps.
Through the trees emerged several men.
By the
noises
of our fighting.
It was Koro who attacked him.
Koro walked away, head bent.
Past my father.
The new Sheraram.
And disappeared from the view.
Majerdo! Shouted Griggy Mueller, his eyes following Koro into the woods.
Father rubbed his face with his hand.
Go to sleep now, all of you. There is a long day ahead of us.
Mikita Koval,
his face full of anger,
took a step towards
me
and raised his fists as if about to strike, but then veered around and instead walked away.
Nikita exits.
I wouldn't pay any attention to him. None of us does anymore.
But he may be dangerous. He had better watch him. He may go to the Germans and ask them to take us home, or denounce us, to save his own skin and his sons. Who knows? I don't trust him.
Let's not exaggerate.
But I saw him.
Gazing worriedly after Makita.
He was my father, but not only my father. He was the head of the lowland Romanis of Brest-Litovsk, responsible for them all. Something I didn't completely understand.
Lights fade. Scene 15, traveling. Lights up on the Mirga caravan.
We traveled on.
Always taking small dirt roads.
A few carts at a time.
Gathering every evening at a prearranged spot deep in the forest to take count.
All along, my father
saw to it that spare were left.
A rag tied to a branch of a telegraph pole, a bone wedged under a tree bark, a broom left on the ground.
Lights fade on Mirga caravan and up on the Puma caravan.
Signs to his people and to any other Romanis to follow us, as this was a safe road.
Crossfade to all the Romanis lined up across the stage.
Then
one day
30 carts never arrived.
Some of the Romanis leave the stage.
No one knew what had happened.
The people had simply disappeared.
It was the day after.
In the afternoon.
That my father
holding his reins. God! His face stricken with horror.
Lights reveal Romanis that just left the stage, now dead and lifeless.
In the ditch by the road were sprawled the bodies of a man, a woman, and 2 children. Our people, the lowland Romanis, judging by their attire.
We must bury them. Pick up these shovels.
Speechless, I looked at the dead. The imprint of terror in their eyes. The entire family wiped out. Their bodies lay near the road. A warning to others. A testimony to history.
Crossfade, time passes. More Romanies leave the stage.
The next day, late in the afternoon, we again met some people, thick-bodied Polish Highlanders. At the sight of us,
they raised their eyes,
raised their
watching
eyes,
Watching the Romanies for a long time.
I suppose there aren't any marketplaces in this area. They must be wondering who we are and where on earth we can be going.
my grandfather
Studied the road. It was becoming narrower as the way wound higher and higher into the hills. We cannot ride much further.
I was holding the reins when my father's hand
An old man is revealed.
Clamped over mine. Stop. He was looking to his left.
For the Gita, Romani, the mountain Romanis, but they are not nomads. They never travel. Where are they?
There's somebody in there, see?
A man in tattered clothes was just emerging from behind one of the hovels. He stopped and looked at us.
Wait!
My grandfather
Jumped to the ground, but as he ran forward, the man started to back away. We are the Romanis. Don't be afraid. Come over here.
Hesitantly, the mountain Romani began to walk towards,
my grandfather.
and after exchanging a few words with him, let himself be brought over to our cart.
Our cart.
You are Romanis?
Yes.
What Romanis?
Lowland ones. The Polska Romanis.
And where do you think you're going?
The man spoke in a dialect different from ours, but easily enough understood because of its mixture of Slovak words, quite similar to Polish ones.
Hungary.
Are you crazy? You can't get across the border. When word reached us that our lives were in danger, we decided to go there because Hungary is so close. 57 of my people, all of my family, my relatives, my friends, were caught. Some were shot on the spot, taken away. I managed to feign dead until the Nazis left, then returned here hoping someone else might too. I've been waiting here for a week. No one has turned up.
The mountain Romani cries.
The color drained
from my father's face.
We are abandoning our carts and going on horseback. Do you want to come with us?
What for? To be caught again?
We shall leave this path and climb through the forest. That way we hope to avoid the frontier guards.
You are mad. If the Germans don't find you, the German shepherd dogs will. I'm not going anywhere. I would rather wait here for my death, where I've lived all my life, where my parents and their parents are buried.
Come with us, please.
No. Go if you want to, but I won't budge from this place. We shall meet in heaven, if there is a heaven.
It was no use arguing. The man was obdurate.
My father picked up the reins.
But it took him several slappings before our horse, as if it too sensed the danger started again.
Father, grant me my wish, please. Let me marry Zoya today, so that we may know at least for one night what life is, before that life comes to an end for us.
Lights crossfade, wedding preparations, sounds of camp singing Amaritzi Amari.
I led Powell, my
best man, away from the crowd that was gathering for
my wedding. Powell, do you have any advice for me as my best man? I mean, I don't know what is expected of me.
You are now a true Roman. You take a wife, and you are fully integrated in the tribe. You can be an elder now, no longer a Befortka Romani, but a lowland Romani who can now make a family. I am proud of you, my friend.
Then he led me
to the shell realm.
From the other side came Zoya, dressed in white, a garland of flowers on her head.
surrounded by bridesmaids.
The people of the camp formed a semicircle around us.
All but two. Koro and his father were conspicuously absent.
The Sheriff was waiting
For us.
on the bank of the stream, a handkerchief in his hand. Are you, Roman Mirga, taking this girl as your lawful wife of your own free will?
My father asked, looking at me. I am, I answered, swallowing hard.
Are you, Zoya Natkin, taking this man as your lawful husband of your own free will?
I am, Zoya said firmly.
My father now took
our right hands
and tied them with the handkerchief. I am throwing the key that locked you two together into the water so that no one will ever find it. Open the lock and separate you. Then he pantomimed the gesture of thrusting an invisible key into the stream.
For a moment,
we all
watched
the rushing waters, as if making sure that the key had disappeared.
I now pronounce you two husband and wife.
Grandmother
handed him scissors.
And he cut the handkerchief, completing the wedding ceremony. Tavel Bactalia Eterna Haiterni.
Let the young man and young woman be happy.
Demeter picks up his violin and begins to play Amarizzi Amari. Fast at first, and then slowly as the lights fade. End of part 1. Thank you, all of you. It was longer than I thought. We never got to properly time it. I'm so sorry. Please make a round of applause for our lovely participants from all over the world, several states, several indigenous lands, who only had 2 days to rehearse this. So they were very brave and awesome. And I'm sorry for any of the sound issues. I'm not sure what happened, but that's why we have friends who tell me to mute things. I'm probably still echoing. I don't know what's going on anymore. Thank you to my co-host for muting me when that was important. Please, if you have anything to give to our actors, please use the givebutter.com and send that to the actors. That will be split amongst them. And I know that there's a delay of about 20 seconds, so this is a really great time for all of the participants to take a bio break, and then we'll come back and see if anybody has any questions for you in the talk back. We also have 2 people in our Zoom room audience who might want to say hello to you and ask some questions. But ladies, if you don't mind, if you would just let the actors go take a little bio break and come back, I will play some. Can I play sound? Do I sound horrible? I don't know what's going on.
You sound fine now.
You sound
sound
fine. It's
fine
all
now.
of us.
Okay.
It's all of us that sound weird.
Okay, it was weird. I'll play some music for 5 minutes so that we have something to listen to.
Boo Boo's like bio break.
I have to pee.
Where we going? We don't need no bio break.
Not at all. I'm just chilling.
Where we're
I
going?
think it's weird that I can see myself looking at myself.
In Mother Russia, we do not need bio break. Bio break need us.
You know, this is true.
In Mother Russia, we do not ride horse. Horse ride us.
Do good things. Did anybody else? You guys hear nightmares? Back.
I have no idea what you just said.
Great. All right, well, I'll go ahead and get started. I see that some people have questions already in the YouTube, so they must have caught up with us.
In the YouTube.
I'm going to shut the door too, because my husband, who ended up having to pinch hit as an actor today, it's echoing. Who also just relieved our emergency babysitter, so fun times. So we had a question from Mary Burkhart. She had trouble placing the Romani accent. It sounded Russian. What were their origins? I just, Mary, just to put it out there, I told the actors they could play with whatever Eastern flavored accent they wanted to, or not at all. It was not a big deal to me because it was a staged reading. In the original production, we had students who kind of added a flavor of otherness to it, but not necessarily an accent per se. But they are from Poland. This particular tribe was Polish. And then Pavel Dombrowski was Keldarari, which the origins are Hungarian, but, or the origins of that particular tribe are Hungarian. And so they traveled, but the Polsko-Roma were pretty much the only tribe of Romani at that time period who lived mostly just in Poland, and the Sinti lived mostly in Germany, but all of them are of Indian descent, northwestern Indian, so it's complicated, but yes, Slavic in flavor, to answer that question.
And I'm just not good at doing an accent. I tried.
Yeah, they had 2 days of rehearsal. Some of them were original cast members. Jenna, who was playing Vala, was in the original cast, so you can kind of sense the sense of otherness that we had created in that world. Brian was also Steele, who ended up playing the lieutenant in Franco, but he also played Mikita Koval in the original production. So we just added a flavor, but not the full Polish accent, which is quite Eastern, but kind of nasal. I don't know. Otherness.
My Polish friends are not going to be happy with me. Not at all.
She said thank you. Apparently 13 people are still here with us. There were a lot of clapping. Roman needs to find a girl quick. Yeah. I don't. Poor John. Everybody who plays Roman gets that comment.
If you would like to pop in some suggestions, I would not be opposed to it.
Wow. Thank you for the donations, those of you that are sending them in. I'm seeing them pop in. Give a shout out to Patricia Walker, to Mary Burkhart, who had the question, who also is an adjunct professor at our college that we teach at, Hunter LeDuc, who I think knows Brett, says he's in a relationship with you on Facebook. I was like, what? Okay.
She's right here.
Oh, hello. That's Hunter. We've never met. I just seen she's like, I'm behind the curtain.
Just so you know, Patricia Walker is my mom.
Oh, I knew that. I just didn't say it quick enough. Hi, Patricia. I hope you're feeling better. She is good. That's good. All right. Yes. The girl who played Mara is a student that I had in a show in Walla Walla, Washington in 2009. I first met her and she was 7. She is now a Sarah Lawrence student, so it's kind of like full circle. Someone I met in Walla Walla when she was 7 is a freshman in college right now. Sarah Lawrence, she had to leave early. She has reading to do. Jenna felt bad for her because they make them read a lot.
Oh.
Yeah. What is the saying that they say there? They're like, there's always more reading. We know you'll never finish it. Like they know very.
Try and get as much vision as you can before the class.
Yeah, they don't care. I remember in grad school, he'd be like, I want you to read it twice before Thursday, and that's like 2 days away, and we'd be like, yeah, maybe we'll get it read once.
You're not my class.
Twice? You're insane. All right, we had some thank yous, clapping, not a lot of questions. Comments maybe from the cast. We haven't really got to chat about the show. Hearing it tonight fully in the first act, I'm still aware that there's cuts that need to be in there, but there's that.
Sounded nice. I liked it. Everybody did amazing to me.
It was really nice to come back to after 15 years.
Yeah, it's good to hear it.
Instead of just pretending that someone a year younger than my daughter.
Yep. Big shout out for those of you who are still watching, because there's still 11 watching. We have 3 people who are in Europe right now. We've got one in France, one in Germany, and one in Switzerland. How late is it there now?
It is 4:30 in the morning.
So for those of you watching, we have some very dedicated friends who I very much adore. Thank you so much. We were supposed to have someone join us from South Korea today, but I don't know what happened, and so we had to have my husband pinch hit. So big round of applause to Nick Lopez, poor guy. It's like, when do I come in? I don't know how to turn off my video. Let me be muted. Interesting experiment for 2 of us, because there was some echoing going on. Thank you, Brian, for fixing that. All right. And big thank you to those of you who popped in late in the game, Malik and Boo Boo. You know, they got one rehearsal.
It's because we love you guys.
I love you. I love all of you, but I really feel like one of these days, Boo Boo, I'm just going to have to make up for all the things I owe you for. Poor boy stepped into so many roles last minute.
At the last minute.
Yeah. Let's see. You're my pinch hitter, man.
I got you. I told you before. If there's nobody else who can help you, I'll help.
Well, prost to all of you.
But I have to go.
All right. Thank you. We'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, let's come tomorrow.
Yeah, we're going to do this tomorrow. Those of you that are watching, there's a part 2. Trigger warning. There's some bad things that happen. Yeah, the subtitle is, the Romani Holocaust, so.
That's what happens when you deal with Nazis.
Mwah. Thank you so much.
See you tomorrow.
All right. Be well. From Canada, Brian Steele. Holding up the world. We got Buffalo in the screen still. We got Sullivan County. We got Plattsburgh, New York. We've got Albuquerque, New Mexico. We've got Switzerland, and my husband who didn't log off.
Something's wrong with my phone. It glitched out, and I'm still confused. It closed out the Zoom and everything.
Oh, look, it's my
And now
kid.
the audio for you guys is really quiet. I can barely.
Weird. Yeah, my phone, my computer did a whole bunch of weird things. Everyone's like, I love that Kim gets in private, was like, Jesse, you need to mute yourself. Like, you need to stop. All I could hear that was happening was like Brett and everybody was fine, but Brett and Boo Boo, when they spoke, would go in and out of the sound. And so I was like, what is going
John
on?
also, his thing was doing some weird stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know what was going on.
Hey, Jess.
Hey, Malik.
Are you drinking a Modelo?
Am I drinking one of what?
A Modelo?
Yes, I am, sir. It is a Modelo.
Those are good. That's
Yeah, it's with a lime too, because we spicy over here.
Yeah, I had some beers out here. Honestly, I go now. You know, guys, I drink a lot of beer. You know, I get my lip. I like just a cold beer.
Yeah. Yeah, you and Boo Boo are some of the first students I ever drank with, because you were both of age. I'm like, oh, here we are at the Kennedy Center. The only thing to do right now is go to this bar.
It's crazy. I got a job over here on campus with the DMP department and the head of it. You know, after the first day of work, we went to his office to see all this thing. You know.
Sorry, I got this weird photo. I thought maybe... Okay, never mind. Wasn't for the show. Oh, bye, Daniel. He left already.
And this is so much fun, like...
It's nice. Well, I think there's only 6 people still watching, so I'm going to turn off the stream. For those of you that are, I haven't seen any other questions. So thank you to all of you that came and supported us